There are many things we can criticise modern society for, but one thing I believe that has been a real development in recent years is the understanding and the removal of stigma around mental health issues. I think we live in a time now where mental health is more understood and garners a higher level of understanding, sympathy, empathy, and indeed there is a more diverse range of treatments available for various mental health disorders, and this can only be a positive thing. However, I believe there are a certain group, a specific but incredibly large group of people who suffer from a type of mental health condition, certainly a type of mental disposition, which is recognised but, dare I say, not understood, and in most cases belittled or mocked or used as a basis for derision. And that's what I want to talk about in today's video. Now, this very demographic of people includes myself. So I will say at the front end of this video that this isn't a pity party, this isn't a woe is me, this isn't me fishing for sympathy or for empathy. The reason I am making this video is, like the few videos that have preceded this, I want people who are in my position or have been in my position to understand that they're not alone. That maybe that the feelings and emotions they are experiencing in this time of their life aren't unique to them, and that there are probably millions of people experiencing the very same thing. I hope you're all keeping safe and sane. I will forego, because this is a more serious video, I'll forego my normal self-promotion, but if you do want to support the channel, you know how. So this demographic that I'm speaking of, this very specific but rather large demographic of people who are suffering from this certain mental health plight, who are they? Well, I believe they are middle-aged men. Now I can already hear a lot of people clicking away from the video. After all, historically at least, middle-class, middle-aged men have deemed to have the easiest lot in life. They have the path of least resistance through society. They are the ones that are accepted. They were historically the ones in control of the wealth. Now, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of discussing whether or not there is still a privilege to being male, or, you know, a privilege to being older, or a privilege to being straight, white, or whatever. Okay, that is certainly something that's maybe beyond my pay grade, and it's certainly a conversation far longer than one can fit into a single YouTube video. However, it's fairly safe to say that there is a certain mental dynamic that affects people like myself. Now, I will stop there and say that technically I don't think I am actually middle-aged. I am at the very front end of my 40s, and yes, if you want to make a sarcastic comment now below about how, oh blimey, you're 40, you look 60, right, as people do have a love of doing, it would seem, then now is your opportunity to do it. So pause the video, go and make your snarky remark, hopefully it'll make you feel better, and then you can come back and watch the rest of my video. Thanks very much. But no, I am at the front end of my 40s, so I may not technically be a middle-aged man just yet, but I certainly have the bald spot coming on, and I'm certainly demonstrating a lot of the symptoms of being part of that demographic would present. All right, and what I'm talking about specifically, as I'm sure I've put in the title of this video, is the midlife crisis. Now, I say that fairly flippantly, and the reason I do is because it's an expression and a term that is commonly used very flippantly. It's often something that is held up for comedic purposes. Indeed, a middle-aged man experiencing a midlife crisis is always somewhat of a subject of ridicule on telly and sitcoms and all the rest of it. All right, we have a stereotype, don't we? We have the balding guy that buys the convertible sports car and the flashy watch and then pursues the young women and, I don't know, wears stupid designer clothes and all the rest of it. And I tick a lot of those boxes. And if my wife's watching, I don't pursue the younger women, all right? But we are held up in a cliched way as a target for ridicule. However, let me just stop for one moment. The very fact that such a substantial part of the population, millions and millions of men, are passing through this area of their lives, this part of their lives, this aging process, and so many are going to experience the same thoughts, feelings, and often those are dark thoughts, dark feelings that can lead to feelings of helplessness, of hopelessness, of regret. They can lead to other mental health disorders such as stress, depression, self-hatred, and dare I say, self-destruction. So to, I believe, merely brush off a midlife crisis as something that just men do and it should be pointed at and ridiculed is maybe doing a disservice to a large portion of the population, and is maybe perpetuating a lot more harmful activities, behaviours and further mental health disorders which we could otherwise mitigate and address. Now, this isn't to say, of course, that we can't make light of and make fun of the balding bloke in the jumper that's 20 years too young for him in his convertible BMW going down the pub listening to old school drum and bass with their sunglasses on. Yes, I do have a very specific person in mind for that comment. Of course, anything is available for jokes and for ridicule. Mocking ourselves is very important, but also mocking other people in a way in which we can help dispel maybe negative factors is part of the British psyche. It's part of what makes British culture what it is. However, I think to completely dismiss the midlife crisis, as we have daubed it, is to do a disservice to the people suffering from it, as it can lead to much more serious issues. A midlife crisis, as I have found myself, leaves us feeling like we don't know where we stand in society. Society here in the West has got a very well-trodden path. You know, if you think about the 2.4 children, the Labrador and the Volvo. Okay, it is expected that as we get older, we mature, we get married, we have children, we develop our careers, and we become far more mature, far more sensible. And not only do we become this, but we embrace it and we accept it. Now let me show you something. On my desk here, I have a big wedge of photos. Okay, now I haven't been through all of these, but they are all of me. There's me on a night out in my early 20s, me at a house party, another one of me at a house party, ex-girlfriend, all sorts of things, right? And it's safe to say that in my house there is a large number of photos, mementos and other things that are representative and reminders of a part of my life which is long gone. Okay, and that could be considered quite sad. But they're not just physically here in the forms of photos and whatever else, but they're permanently here. And thoughts of a past version of myself and a past mental version of myself are never, ever far away. And I believe that it is, you know, not unique to me, but this is the reason why so many men, when they hit their 40s or 50s or whatever, seek to rediscover their younger years, merely with the trappings of a past version of themselves, or maybe trappings that a past version of themselves would have wished to have had. Maybe when you were 20 you couldn't afford a convertible sports car, maybe you couldn't afford a Rolex, so you buy these things in a desire to rediscover a past version of yourself. But why do we feel the need to do this? Well, I can only speak for myself, but if this is you, then please know that you're not alone. It's because this person in this photo here, okay, he may look a little bit like me, but this is a long time ago. But up here, in my brain, we are the same person. Sure, I've learnt a few things. Sure, I'm probably a little wiser in some capacity, and maybe I don't do all the same stupid things I did when I was younger. But the desire is there. If I'm watching TV and there's a group of young people going out clubbing, in my head, I still want to do that. I still want to be young and carefree and look at that road of life stretching out ahead of me. And you know what? I get scared. I get scared because this is how I feel now. And I get scared as to how I'm going to feel in a decade, 2 decades, God willing, 3 decades' time. This stress, this unrelenting desire and urge to rediscover a version of myself that it lives on in here and in here, but not in reality. And this can, and has in my instance, but I'm sure does in the instances of many, many millions of men, this manifests itself as depression, as stress, and in my instance, addiction. All right. One of the outward signs of a midlife crisis. Okay, one of the things, if we were to paint a picture or cast someone to play a guy having a midlife crisis in a TV sitcom, you would ensure that that person had a sizable beer gut. Now, a beer gut is not just someone who is maybe, enjoying the excesses of life. A beer gut is an outward symptom of an unhealthy habit, and in many cases, an addiction. And I know many people who are alcoholic or borderline alcoholic, or certainly have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And one of the things most of them have in common is that they are middle-aged or beyond men who seek solace in each other's company, because in the famous words of Billy Joel, it's better than drinking alone. So I think whilst, yes, it's ripe for mockery, there needs to be an understanding. Because otherwise men will seek solace in these harmful habits, in anything that allows them to distance themselves from reality and put themselves in their bubble, and gambling addiction did that for me. It enabled me to detach myself from the ever-aging person that I was. The fact I was drifting further and further away from the societal expectation of what I was, and more towards this sort of societal punching bag when it came to the ridicule of a midlife crisis. I could find solace and distraction in addiction and in negative, harmful behavioural cycles. Now, I don't want this to be a men versus women, who has it worst kind of discussion. But we all know that women experience certain changes and developments as they physically age. And a lot is talked about and a lot is understood, and there is an awful lot of sympathy, empathy and understanding around the aging process in women, be that both psychologically and physically. Now, in men, we understand from a biological level how we age, but what we don't seem to understand, and maybe as a society we don't choose to try and understand, or at least we don't choose to try and empathise or sympathise with, is what is causing a midlife crisis in men. Sure, it's fun to point at the bloke in the convertible with the ball patch, all right, but what has made him go and do that? Because it's not just harmful for the people that are experiencing these crises, okay, and maybe seeking solace in other harmful and addictive behaviours. It's harmful for the people close to them. I personally know men of middle age who have left good, mutually supportive, beneficial relationships with lovely, lovely women, who leave their kids behind, who leave their families behind, who abandon the very person that they have built a life to become in order to pursue the unobtainable 21-year-old barmaid, and try and relive their youth. Yeah, sure, I think it's fairly safe to say that a lot of us would like to be young again, to relive certain experiences, to fix certain things, to forego certain regrets. But the very fact that this very specific series of events seems to happen to many, many millions of people, mainly men, in the very, very similar well-trodden way, surely it's something that is worth trying to understand, so that we can mitigate not just the potential harm to those people, but to the potential harm to those people around them who may suffer as a result of knee-jerk reactions to some form of psychological shift. Bit of a rant, not quite sure what the point of the video was. I don't know whether it was purely sort of some sort of therapy. For me, it was certainly a bit cathartic. But I think, like I say, like my most recent videos, the point of this one was purely to say that if this is you, if you are someone who's getting older but doesn't feel it, apart from the extra aches and pains and the depressing notion that you will be 10 years, 20 years down the line looking back further still, you are not alone. And I think maybe as a society, whilst it's deemed that, middle class, middle-aged men have it so easy, that maybe there is just, worth investigating a little bit to help this demographic of people not fall into some of the pitfalls that the feeling of not being understood or the feeling of being shunned from society can indeed provoke. All right, stay safe, stay sane. As always, Patreon link in the description below. Thanks to everyone for your support. Take care.